Superman and Lois, Season 3, Episode 11, entitled Complications. Superman, Metropolis law enforcement, and the DoD have been hard at work trying to locate Pia, Bruno, and Mateo Mannheim, but have been unsuccessful so far. During a fake attack in Metropolis conducted by Pia using her powers to create a shootout in a neighborhood of Metropolis, police arrive and think they are being shot at until they realize it's a fake attack and it is just fake gunfire sounds and no real bullets are being shot. Superman arrives to assist the police but then realizes it is Pia doing this. A female police officer tells Superman that these fake attacks keep happening. She then asks him, "When is this going to stop, Superman?" Superman looks at her with a serious look and tells her that he's working on it. Superman then flies up into the sky and hovers over Metropolis to see if he can hear or see anything from up there, but he can't, and General Lane tells him in his earpiece that they need to get to the bottom of this and stop her because whatever cure Mannheim gave her, it kicked her powers up by a lot. The next day, Lois and Clark go to Hobbs Bay Medical Center so Lois can get prepped for tomorrow's surgery, which will be her double mastectomy. While talking with the doctor about preparations, Clark picks up with his super hearing Pia using her powers again to create yet another fake attack. The Mannheims are getting ready to move away from Metropolis now that Pia is cured of her cancer and has her powers back. They are being hunted by Superman, the police, and the DoD. Both Mateo and Bruno are happy to be back together with Pia and that she is cured and her powers have returned. She feels the exact same way they do. But Pia isn't alright and slowly starts to realize her powers are not working properly. Back in Smallville, Clark and Chrissy are at the Gazette and so is Kyle Cushing. Clark tells him everything about him being Superman and asks Kyle to keep it to himself, which he fully agrees to do. Kyle is so nerdy, happy, and giddy and is just overcome with disbelief about all this. But Kyle is still not happy with Chrissy for keeping all that from him. Kyle treats Chrissy like crap because he feels like she should have told him anyway. He walks out of the Gazette office mad at Chrissy. Typical classic Kyle, always blaming someone else. Typical bullshit from him. Later on that night, Clark, Lois, Lana, John Henry Irons, along with Natalie, Sarah, Jordan, and Jonathan, all have a small party get-together at the farm for dinner as Lois prepares for her surgical procedure, and this is her last meal before her surgery tomorrow. All the adults eat in the dining room and the kids eat in the family room except for Jordan, who is eating by himself outside on the front porch. Sarah goes to try and talk to him, but he refuses to hear her out. Sarah says to him, "I thought we agreed to be friends," and Jordan says, "So did I." Lois, Clark, Lana, and John Henry all enjoy each other's company, and Lois tells them all thank you and that she feels ready to face tomorrow's procedure. The next day, Lois, Clark, and the boys go to the hospital in Metropolis. Sam Lane is already there, and the nurses, as well as Clark, help Lois get ready. Lois, Clark, Sam, and the boys meet Dr. Lincoln and the surgical team. While meeting the team, it gets to be too much for Jordan. His heart starts beating really fast and he starts breathing really hard. He excuses himself and leaves the room. Outside, he falls to the ground realizing something is not right with his eyes and his sight and his vision. Jonathan and Clark go to find him, and Clark realizes his X-ray vision powers are starting to show up. Jonathan gets him to calm down and breathe and works with his brother to help him manage his new powers coming in. Back in Smallville, Lana gets up and finds Sarah in the kitchen and realizes she's been up all night, upset at everything that has happened. Lana gets super worried about her. Lana gets stressed and goes to tell Kyle about what is happening with Sarah. As Lana explains the situation, Kyle realizes how serious it is and grabs his coat and goes with Lana to see Sarah. Wearing her suit, Natalie flies to the Mannheim's place only to find it abandoned. Her dad is wearing his suit and tracked her to the Mannheim's place. They both talk about Mateo there and what he did. John Henry tells Natalie that she needs to let him go. She tells her dad she still loves him, and he tells her he doesn't want her to be stuck in the past like he was after his Lois died. As Natalie and John Henry Irons fly back home, she leaves an AI device behind a photo in Bruno's place. In Bruno's underground bunker, the train is about ready to take them away from there when Pia's powers start malfunctioning and she grabs her body in pain. Her powers go haywire and she loses control of them. Clark, Lois, Sam, and Dr. Lincoln can hear the sound waves and vibrations coming from Pia at the hospital. The hospital temporarily loses power. Sam gets on the phone and his team at the DoD say things are down everywhere. Phone, electrical, internet. Lois and Clark talk and try to understand what this is. They both come to the conclusion that Pia is losing control and that the Mannheim's cure didn't work. In the bunker, Pia is still in pain as her powers are not getting any better. Bruno thinks she just needs another dose of the cure, and his men get the vials out of the cold storage. They get the cure vials, and Bruno injects her with a second dose, but it fails to work, and her malfunctioning powers get even worse than what they were before. The situation goes from bad to worse, and Matteo runs off to see if he can find someone else to help her. Bruno and Pia both realize that she can't be saved, and she leaves even as her powers are still malfunctioning. Back at the hospital, Jordan and Jonathan talk about Jordan's powers and how they always seem to come in when Jordan is in a rough spot. Jonathan tells him he is always so uptight all the time and that he needs to literally chill out. Even though weird things are happening and the power is going on and off and the generators are working, Lois still wants to go through with the surgery, but Clark is hesitant, but Lois tells him that she wants to do this, and Clark and the boys watch as Lois is wheeled into surgery. After Lois goes into surgery, Superman arrives at the DoD as Sam and John Henry Irons are trying to locate Pia. Superman tells Sam that even though all this is going on, Lois went ahead and went into surgery. Matteo goes to his dad's office and hears the AI that Natalie left for Matteo, and Natalie flies into Bruno's office to find Matteo. Bruno and his men show up in his office, and Bruno orders Natalie to get away from Matteo, and one of his men points a gun right at Natalie. At the diner in Smallville, Kyle, Lana, and Sarah talk about Sarah's situation. Back in Metropolis, as Natalie is held at gunpoint, John Henry Irons' hammer comes through the window and knocks all of his men down. Irons flies and grabs Bruno and threatens him with his hammer. Matteo tells John Henry Irons that his mom is not well and needs help. Irons asks where she is and tells Bruno to stop wasting everyone's time fighting him so they can help Pia. Pia gets to the streets and her powers are now way out of control. She sees all the damage she is causing and all the people she is hurting. Inside the hospital, Lois is fully sedated and the doctors are having a hard time doing their jobs because the building is vibrating and shaking. Out in the waiting room, Jordan uses his new X-ray vision to see if Lois is okay. He tells Jonathan that she's okay for now, but he sees a huge canister of nitrogen about to fall over, so he uses his super speed and speeds into the OR to secure it without anyone seeing him. He secures it and leaves. At the DoD, Superman hears Pia and flies off to Metropolis. Superman arrives in Metropolis just a few feet behind Pia. He uses his X-ray vision and scans the inside of her body to see what's going on inside of her. He sees the cancer still inside of her and that it is everywhere. She tells him to stay away, but he says back to her, "Let me help you." She tells him that no one can help her. One of her sound waves is so powerful it hits Superman, knocking him up several hundred feet into the sky. Matteo and Bruno make it to the roof of their home. John Henry Irons and Natalie make it to the roof with them. Matteo begs Natalie to take him to her, but she says if she does that he will die, and she decides not to. Superman flies back down and lands in front of Pia. She falls to the ground, still in terrible pain with her powers still out of control. Superman can't get close to her because of how powerful the sound waves are. Superman tells her that it's okay and that Matteo and Bruno wouldn't want her to suffer. He says to her that it's okay to let go. Superman is finally able to get to her and he grabs her. She pulls him in close and whispers something in his ear. Superman flies her straight up and her powers overload, which causes an explosion in the sky. Bruno, Matteo, John Henry Irons, and Natalie all see Superman carry her up there and the explosion happen. Superman flies her body down to the balcony of Bruno and Matteo's home. He lands and gently lays her lifeless body on the ground. Bruno and Matteo rush to her and both fall apart in emotional pain as they realize she's dead. Superman tells them both what she whispered in his ear. Superman says she wanted me to tell you both that she'll love you both forever and always. Superman flies to the hospital and he and the boys continue to wait for the surgery to be done so they can see Lois. Still at the Mannheim's place, Natalie stays with Matteo as he grieves. Bruno holds his wife's body as John Henry Irons watches and knows what it's like losing a spouse like that. Sarah turns in a job application at the diner in Smallville. Lois comes out of surgery and recovery. Clark and the boys go into Lois's hospital room to find her awake, and she tells them that she's glad it's over. They tell her about Pia and that the cure didn't work and that she lost control of her powers and died. Later on that night in Smallville, Kyle goes to the Gazette and apologizes to Chrissy for how he handled her, not telling him about the secret. She forgives him and they continue their relationship. John Henry Irons and General Sam Lane now have Bruno Mannheim and Matteo Mannheim in custody. Bruno says he will tell them everything in exchange for all charges against Matteo being dropped. Bruno tells his son that he's taking responsibility for his actions. Bruno asks John Henry Irons, "Promise me my son will be looked after," and Irons gives him his word that he will make sure that that happens. General Sam Lane and Irons agree to the deal. Clark, Lois, and the boys return home to Smallville to the farm. Back in Metropolis, at the destroyed underground lair, Bizarro Superman is awake, fully alive once again, and walking around with his eyes glowing blue, and he starts screaming. And that is how Superman and Lois, Season 3, Episode 11, Complications, ends. Wow, what an episode. This was a really good one. It has action, suspense, and courage. It has emotion and heartache as well. This episode had a lot going on with all of our characters. Jordan and Sarah being at odds with each other, Lana being worried about Sarah after the accident, a possible growing relationship between Lana and John Henry Irons, John Henry Irons trying to convince Natalie to let Mateo go and move on, Bruno, Pia, and Mateo Mannheim on the loose and hiding from the law, Superman and the DOD and the Metropolis Police trying to find the Mannheims, Lois waiting to see if her article about Lex Luthor being sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit is going to get him released back into society, Jordan gets another superpower coming in, and it's his X-ray vision, and last but certainly not least is Lois going in for her double mastectomy surgery. So about Pia, I think when she was given the cure that it amped her powers up way too much, and that is what resulted in her losing control of her powers. And since we saw in the episode that Superman scanned her body, I mean, it didn't work to begin with because there was still cancer everywhere inside her body when Superman scanned her. It was heartbreaking to see all that happen because the Mannheims and us, the audience members, pretty much knew that she wasn't going to survive this. When all that was happening, it was hard watching because Mateo and Bruno were having to say goodbye to a wife and mother. So, yeah, they were losing a loved one, and everyone's gone through that. Okay, I know I talked about this in the last episode review, but I'm going to talk about this character one last time, and that's Kyle Cushing. So you know what I said last time about him. Here's what I'm going to say about him this time. So here goes. So there's a scene in this episode where Clark is explaining everything to Kyle about him being Superman, and now Kyle is very happy, smiley, and even giddy at times. Let me just say, that really pissed me off once again. Kyle is such a loser and a dirtbag. So you go from being extremely mad at everyone for being kept in the dark for a reason about Clark to now jumping for joy because you know the secret. I mean, give me a break. That was so pathetic on Kyle's part. In the last episode, he was like a 2-year-old child throwing a fit, and now he's happy because he got what he wanted. He got his way. Like a 2-year-old child throwing a fit because they couldn't have a bar of candy or something, and the parents gave in and said, okay, give him the bar of candy. I mean, I hope after this season we never have to see Kyle Cushing again. I'm just so done with that loser. Hopefully he'll die at the end of this season, or they won't bring the character back, or something. I knew during the episode that something was going to happen, or there was going to be problems during Lois's surgery. And sure enough, I was right. Due to Pia being out on the streets and hurting people and her powers going crazy, it caused tremors throughout parts of the city and loss of electrical power. And at one point, Jordan has to save his mom, the doctors, and nurses during the operation as he quickly races into the operating room using his super speed without being seen and stops a huge nitrogen tank from falling over and hurting people because of the tremors. But at the same time, I thought maybe we would see Lois's vitals start dropping or something like that, or maybe her even flatlining for a little bit just to keep us all in suspense. But of course, we, the audience, know that nothing would happen to her because then we wouldn't have a show. But her flatlining, that didn't happen. So anyway, it was good to see the emotion that Bruno Mannheim does have some humanity when we see him and Mateo mourn over Pia's death when Superman carries her body back up to the balcony where they both are. I like that we finally saw a more softer side to Bruno during those scenes and how it broke him, and that she was gone and that no matter what he did, he could not save her. Talk about real life and real powerful stuff. This episode had all that. It had me choking up with tears in my eyes at times. Losing someone you love dearly is brutal, and it is something no one will ever get over. Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say about this episode, so now it's grading time. I'm going to give Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode 11, Complications, a very well-deserved A. Here are my final thoughts. Talk about a great episode. It was awesome, and it was one of those that not only keeps you on the edge of your seat, but it has heartfelt emotion, drama, action, humor, and was just well written and had a well-rounded story in this season. This season has really been about the humanity, and who knows what's coming next. I know one thing, whatever it is, it will be mind-blowing and totally unexpected. The way this show has been done so far this season has been absolutely phenomenal, and now we only have 2 episodes left in this season, and who knows what we're going to see in those last 2 episodes, but I know it's going to be something awesome, and I can't wait for those last 2 episodes. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to say good night. God bless. I love all of you, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.